right. Welcome back to the Primal Pursuits podcast. Today we have Baker Leavitt joined with us. Baker, can you introduce yourself for the audience?
How's everyone doing? Thanks for having me, guys. My name is Baker Leavitt. I am the Director of Strategic Relations for Black Rifle Coffee, co-founder of KillCliff, the drink company, and do some political consulting on the side with a project called Vote4America.org, and then a veteran initiative called Smokeless Vets, which is something I'm also pretty excited about working on. And I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, Baker. It's been a lot of fun. Followed you a bit on social, and love your vibe and just general approach to life, work ethic, some of those other things. Feel like we have some things in common, and thought it'd be a lot of fun to have you on the show.
Absolutely, yeah. 24 hours in a day, you can accomplish a lot if you set your mind to it. I have a lot of fun. Like I don't have any complaints. My life is set up the way I want it to be, and I work hard, and then I have a lot of fun too while I'm at it.
Yeah, not a lot of folks can say that. Most people are still chasing something, so that's good if you got it dialed in. And now it's more just fine tuning, right? Just keep the blade sharp.
It's that saying, you know that saying, like, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's BS. Only rich people say that. Like, there's no poor person that's like, yeah, man, find what you love and you'll never work. Like, that's the people that are already rich say that. I think that's a pretty silly saying, but I think in life, the key to success is finding what you're good at and getting someone to pay you to do it. Like, you don't have to love it. You just got to be good at it. And if you're good at it, that means you probably do something you should be working on. So that's kind of my thing on that.
So when you say good at, right, are you talking about good at from the get-go, like God-given talent in the beginning, or something that you start off doing and then you develop that skill or ability?
It's a little bit of both. So, like, Jay Cutler, he's a business partner of mine in a drinkware company called Outsider. Jay played quarterback in the NFL for 10 years. He was with the Broncos, and then he was with the Bears for 8 years. And, like, Jay's 6'5", uber intelligent guy, and has an absolute cannon. His shoulders are 7 feet wide. I think the furthest he's ever thrown a ball is 84 yards, which is just crazy. And he's psychotically intelligent too. Like, it's creepy. And Jay's a good example. Like, when I tell people about him, it's like you meet him and you're like, well, what else is this guy going to do? Of course, he's a NFL quarterback. He's good looking. He's smart. He's 6'5". He has long arms and broad shoulders. He also has I think the NFL quarterback bench press record at 415 pounds. So to answer your question,
wow,
yeah, he had to work to be the best quarterback he could be, but, like, I think our paths are kind of chosen a lot of the time. Like, he's not going to go be an Olympic fencer, that's for sure. He's not going to be a ballerina. Or John Welburn, another buddy of mine that played in the NFL for 10 years. John's 6'5". I have a lot of friends that are 6'5". I'm kind of getting sick of tall people. I'm 5'10". John's 6'5", 315 pounds. And I think the genetics were there for John to be an offensive lineman. He's a big boy. And the thing that's interesting about John is I think that John's also, like, wildly intelligent, super smart guy, and was obsessed with technique. And John started, strength and conditioning very seriously when he was in, like, 8th grade. He started taking creatine when he was in, like, 8th grade or freshman in high school. And so everything that he's done, like, I think that it's like Occam's razor, like, the obvious choice is the correct choice usually. And I think with guys like that, you just kind of go down the path. It's like Greek people with they're shipbuilders, like, they build all the ships. Well, that's kind of in their DNA, as the Greek people. That's what they do. They build ships. For me, I've always, mine's a little bit different. Like, I enjoy people. I like talking to people. I enjoy interacting with people. I'm really attracted to people that are good at things because I find that super interesting. Like, if you're good at something, that means that you've spent a lot of time, like, mastering your craft. And I'm curious about that. So like if, for example, like if you're like an Olympic fencer, like that's not easy. That takes a lot of work to get there. Like I would love to have a conversation with someone like that. Like, how does it work? How long have you been doing it? What got you into it? So for me, I'm a very curious person about people and what they do and how they, got to the point in life where they're doing these things. And that kind of led me into marketing. I describe what I do as like, I'm kind of like a broker of expertise. Like I'm not an expert really at anything, but I know all the experts, and so I'm like an architect for ecosystems, networks like that. I create those networks and get everything flowing together and working in cohesion. And so for me, it was just kind of a natural fit. Like I like having fun and I like doing interesting things. And like, if I don't like something, I'm just not going to do it. I don't care. I don't care. And I won't put myself in a position where I need to do something that I don't like. So, I graduated from University of Georgia and lived in the Keys for 6 months working on a dive boat, just messing around. And then, kind of realized one day that the furthest place in the continental United States you can go without leaving the country is Key West. And I kind of looked at all the locals and I was like, I don't really like these people. They're running from child support, taxes, alimony, the law, whatever laundry list, working for their bar tab or working for their drug habit. And I just packed up in the middle of the night, about 10 o'clock, and just started driving home to Savannah, Georgia, where I'm from. And I got into real estate. I just excelled at it really, really quickly. I thought real estate was cool. I thought it was fun. I thought it was exciting. I got to meet, really cool people that were successful. I thought that was awesome. And I just kind of was a natural at it, just talking to people and like, hey, this is a good, you're looking for these things. Here's some properties, I show people property, and they ended up buying. One of the first things I did was I drove around like the worst areas of the historic district in Savannah, and I started writing letters to homeowners of abandoned houses. So Savannah is the largest historic district land-wise in the United States of America. And I just started driving around in like the most dilapidated, rundown, crappy homes. I just write letters and just got a ton of listings, and then learned about, where things were being developed and what was a good deal. And then, fast forward a year, I started buying rental property. And then in 2005, I bought 3 buildings on Broughton Street for $3.5 million. And then a year later, I bought 2 buildings on Broughton Street for $6.5 million. So the funny thing about that is I closed on a dilapidated 220 West 39th Street. I closed on that. It was an abandoned crack house on a Tuesday for $5,500, and ended up selling that for $32,000. So I made money on that. But on Thursday of that week, I closed on 5 and 15 West Broughton Street for $6.5 million. And when the market crashed in 2008, those 2 buildings were the ones that took out my entire real estate portfolio when when everything went under. So that's the long answer, Canyon, to your question.
So with that, it's interesting. I had someone ask me the other day. I was a guest on a podcast, and they said, what were you born to do? And it made me laugh because, like you, my journey's taken me all kinds of places. Starting in construction, and if I go back before that, it was paper routes and pizza delivery, and I look back at the lessons I learned at each of those things. And some of the things I learned and that I learned I was good at, or that helped me really refine other skills, you can't really learn in a different role. I mean, you kind of have to go through that to get that piece of you. And that puzzle piece as it's formed over the course of time, I'm 50 years old now, has become this collage of who I am today. And most of those parts of my journey help build that success whatever success I've achieved so far. So, what were you born to do?
Every job you have in your life,
Mm-hmm.
you take something away from it. So like Troy's 17 and he's got his first job and he's working at a coffee shop that does like breakfast and brunch. And like he's learned a bunch of stuff about working in a kitchen and the different roles. So he's kind of like a little do everything. You know, he's a kid, junior, rising senior in high school, but like he does all kinds of stuff at his job, like dicing, prepping food, bussing tables, all that stuff. And I think honestly, some of the best lessons I've ever learned were from some of the first jobs I ever had. Like my family owned shopping centers in Savannah, and like I honestly I have picked up more cigarette butts without gloves and cleaned shopping center parking lots than anyone knows. Like I have picked up thousands and thousands of cigarette butts. My grandfather would call me on a Sunday morning and say, "You want to make $20?" And you know, in 1982, for a 12-year-old, $20 was a ton of money, you know. And I'd be like, "Absolutely!" And I would just go and pick up trash in the parking lots and pull weeds and tons of that stuff. And then, you know, family had some farms and, you know, working on farms and stuff. And then we had some dry cleaners. And I'll tell you this, the job I've hated worse than anything I've ever done in my life was working on a press machine in a dry cleaner. Like that lasted a day.
Really?
And then they fired me because they had 18 pairs of pants returned. And I was 15 at the time. And then I worked at Kroger's bagging groceries. So I know how you bag groceries and how you set things up and if it's done properly, correctly, incorrectly. So yeah, every job I've ever had is always, I've taken something away from it, a lesson, some type of lesson in life in some capacity.
What did you take from the 2008 crash? You know, because you spent all this time, you saw some pretty good success and you were building something, and then all of a sudden the market crashes and everything that you've done up to that point in real estate goes under. How did you
I
bounce
lost
back?
$15 million between 2008 and 2010. That was a $15 million real estate portfolio, like everything. I lost it all. And one thing I learned was that like every 10 years, this country, we go through some type of economic turmoil that we don't learn from. So like in college, my aunt was an investment banker in San Francisco, and every summer I would intern out there for her investment bank. And I was out there during the dot-com bubble and the dot-com crash. So I was right there at the peak of that. And I watched that crash. And then, 10 years later, that was 1998, 10 years later, 2008, the real estate market crashes. And like, we don't, and then 10 years after that, 2018, we have another catastrophic economic event take place. And I learned that like, we don't learn from, as a country, we have a short attention span, a short memory. So I was the king of the walk in Savannah, Georgia. I was, late 20s, and I owned 5 of the biggest buildings on Broughton Street, which is our main drag. And I learned a ton, like, when you think you're screwed and life's over, it's not really the case. So, and I learned a lot about people. Like when you're on the way to the top of the mountain, like everyone's behind you cheering, go, go, go. And when you get to the top of the mountain, there's nothing more that anyone wants to see than to see you fail. And that was unfortunate, and it sucked, to be like everyone liked you. And then all of a sudden, like, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going to happen. You think your life's over. I don't know how I didn't have to file bankruptcy. That to this day, I still think about that. And like I've done some pretty high level financial stuff in my life and have a pretty good grasp on how all that works. And to this day, I still don't understand how I escaped that, but I did. So I felt sorry for myself. My brother had just started medical school. He's like, you should join the military. And so I was going to go Rep 63, which is straight into SF selection. You go through the National Guard. I think the 20th Special Forces group is out there near you guys. 19th in Alabama. And I had a bad shoulder and inguinal hernia. They're like, you're not going to pass MEP. So I was like, well, I got to do something. So I started going through the Defense Foreign Service Agent program with the Department of State. And I was like, well, if I have language and medical, like, I'll be unstoppable. So I went to NYU to get a master's degree in Arabic, and I was taking emergency medicine at Columbia. And I remember the first night in New York, my car got towed. And I was like, well, as a punishment, I'm going to walk to the impound lot, which is like 80 blocks. I mean, it's at the top of New York, top of Manhattan. And I got about two blocks into that walk, and I realized everything was going to be okay because everyone around me had their own problems, and losing everything in real estate was in the past. That was behind me, and I didn't need to worry about it. I'd be okay. And so that was August of 2010, and then I started a CrossFit apparel company called Tupood in December of 2010. And then in January of 2011, we started a drink company, KillCliff. So for a couple months there, I was pretty down in the dumps. Like, it was tough. Like, I mean, you know, it's like when it's the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, you know? And there's people that have had way worse things happen to them, but that's not you. It's like when a middle schooler and his girlfriend break up and one of them's heartbroken. And adults laugh it off, like, he'll get over it. Don't worry about it. It's like, well, yeah, but he still has to go through, or he or she has to go through that quest because it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. They've never had the heart broken. They've never been in something and then on the outside looking in, and you know, one stays in the cool crowd, one goes to the you know, the outcast crowd, and you know, it's tough for kids. So I thought that was like the end of the world, but then I quickly realized that feeling sorry for yourself doesn't accomplish anything and is a complete waste of time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, you can only harp on it for so long. I think, you know, it's okay in that moment to be like, man, this sucks, but reflect on it and figure out what are the next steps to overcome.
Yeah, and then time heals all wounds, you know, and you just have to keep going forward. Like, you don't have to quit. Don't quit. You don't have to, you know, do this, do that. You just have to keep going forward because there's light at the end of the tunnel, and no trial lasts forever. You know, like, just keep plowing ahead, one step at a time, one day at a time, and things just take care of themselves. You know, and like, you know, honestly, looking back, so I turned 49, I think Saturday or next Saturday or something like that, and I can honestly say, like, I really don't think I got my shit together until I was 40. Now, I had tremendous success, you know, through my 30s, and you know, made a bunch of money and all that stuff, but like, was still, you know, I think everything up until you're 40 years old is just practice. It's like preseason. You know, like when you hit 40, like that's when the game starts. You know, that's just that for me, at least. That's my take on that.
As far as like reflecting and learning from, you know, those challenges you went through, and like you said, you know, some people can have it worse, but you only know what you know.
Mm-hmm.
You only experience what you experience, and you need to learn from it. So you mentioned talking about KillCliff and how you co-founded that. How do you feel like the challenges that you learned from affected your come up with KillCliff?
I still, like, we made a bunch of mistakes with KillCliff. So, like, you know, we sold it to a VC firm in 2015 and sold it to another VC firm in 2018. And then we bought it back from the last VC firm we sold it to last February. So like a year and a half ago. And hyper focused on, there weren't really many similarities between the two. So like lessons learned in real estate didn't necessarily convey to lessons learned in KillCliff. However, the mistakes we made in the early days of KillCliff, we will not be making this next go around with KillCliff. So there's not many parallels in between those two lessons, those two stories, totally different.
What about mentally? You know, like, because you said you made a lot of mistakes with KillCliff in the beginning. Was there anything you took from getting out of that hole with real estate mentally that prepared you for sticking through it with KillCliff, even though things got hard? Or
yeah, so KillCliff was a freight train, man. It was amazing. It was awesome. And then we took on the wrong VC money, and they ultimately, the VC firms, their goal is to gain control, and they eventually got control. And I was the last person of the original group to leave. I was the last man there, last man standing. And I think on that one, I learned I'd stayed 2 years too long, and it was time to move on. And they just, I watched, I guess not speaking up was probably one regret I had, not being really, really vocal about some things and just focusing on what I was doing. I probably should have been a little bit more vocal, which that is what I learned in the real estate thing was I should have been more vocal with some of my partners. Like, hey, don't do that. That's wrong. That's not right. Shouldn't be doing that. So a little bit of regret, but if you harp on regret, it doesn't really accomplish anything. You need to focus on not stepping in the dog crap in the yard. You stepped in a pile of dog crap this morning. Don't go step in it again.
Yeah, you watch for that next time. You're looking for it before you go out in the yard instead of
No, yeah, you make someone go
right,
pick it all up.
right. Yeah, that's another key. So where, Baker, do you think your entrepreneurial spirit comes from? Obviously, like you've done a lot of things. You've been an entrepreneur most of your life. It sounds like. Where does that come from?
So what I'm about to say does not really apply to anyone. I'm a very unique individual in the way that I do things. Entrepreneurial spirit, like I don't fit into the traditional 9-to-5 role. Like 9-to-5 jobs are great. They're very secure. Not 401k, insurance, benefits, all that good stuff. That's super important. Not everyone's an entrepreneur. Not everyone, like I'm like one out of a million. Like I do things very, very differently than most people. I have this thing, and most people don't. It drives a lot of people crazy. So it's called the black box theory. So you give me, we want to achieve C. You want C. That's what you want. Baker, I need to get to C. All right. What do I have to work with? Here you go. I have A plus B equals C. And A is what you give me to work with. C is the desired outcome. B is how the sausage is made, and you don't get to ask those questions because I don't know how it's going to work, but I'll get to C. I'll figure it out. I do things like Jay Gould is arguably the greatest businessman this country's ever produced. And he has a saying, he goes, I focus on the goal. I don't focus on the planning. It's a waste of time. We'll figure things out along the way because I don't plan. I don't do that. Most C-level, like, chief executive officers, CMOs, CFOs, COOs, I give those people nightmares because I'm very, very difficult to manage. I would say I'm unmanageable. My football coaches and soccer coaches growing up would say I'm uncoachable. And then real estate, pretty coachable. I kind of followed, but that's kind of an independent person there. And then with KillCliff, like Todd, who's the founder, like is one of those people that just knew how to manage me, which is you don't try to manage me. Yeah, you cut me loose. Like it's like an Agoge challenge. Like I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna bring back value, and I will provide value every single day. And then the same with Black Rifle. Evan Hafer, CEO, the founder of Black Rifle, was the same way. Like unmanageable. So, and I'm not like a traditional entrepreneur. Like I don't start a lot of companies. I don't really start any companies. I'm a team player. I don't want to be the CEO. I don't want to be the boss. I don't want to be in charge of anything. But I add tremendous value and I make things better. So like in fact, my consulting company is really the only company I've ever started by myself. Like I'm the CEO just by default because I'm the only. I have employees, but like it's my company and do things the way I say do it. But I've got really good employees. But like, yeah, entrepreneur. It's like I'm like a hybrid entrepreneur. I would say like I don't. Just by default, man. Like I don't fit into a lot of like puzzles over here. Like I don't fit into any puzzle. Like I'm an army of one. That's the way I would describe it. I'm a fixer. Like you need something done. Like I'm a broker of expertise. Like I just get things done.
What I think is pretty cool is that you're in the right room with these people, right? So my question to you,
Yeah, I'm in the room with some very, very impressive individuals on a daily
exactly.
basis.
And so my question to you is, how did you develop that skill, or maybe it was just a talent, but how did you develop that ability to put yourself in those rooms to connect with these people?
Providing value and doing things that other people can't do. Like, so you find that if you really want to be a superstar, you find the problems that other people can't even identify and you solve them. So, what's the saying I like to use? Superstars hit a target most people can't reach. Talent hits a target most people can't reach. Genius hits a target most people can't even see. That's kind of I'm not a genius. I'm not saying that, but so yeah. So like I've always wanted to create the news. I'd have never wanted to be the news. So like you put me in a room like senators, congressmen, CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies on the phone with donors that are worth multiple billions of dollars. I know my lane and I know my role, and I'm just really good at that. And like I remember when I lived in Washington State, Seth Rollins, who's a wrestler,
Yep.
professional wrestler, he and I somehow crossed paths and we became friends. And he liked our weightlifting belts, the two-pood Metcon belt. And I sent him a bunch, and he loved them. And then he's like, "Hey man, John Cena really likes this thing and wants some." And I was like, may I give him your number?" I was like, "Of course, absolutely." So John Cena, I remember he called me, and like I was like, "All right, I'm going to get off the phone with this dude faster than anybody's ever gotten off the phone with him, and I'm going to talk to him like he's a normal person." I was like, "Hey, what's up, man? This is Baker." He's like, "Yeah, this is John Cena." I was like, "Hey, how you doing? Seth said you're going to be calling." He's like, "Yeah, I really love that belt." And I was like, "Listen, dude, I'm super busy. Text me your address and your size, and I'll get a bunch out to you. I got to run." Hung up on him. And so I guess I just kind of figured out that like super famous, super powerful people, they just want normalcy more than anything on this planet. And so Evan Hafer, who is the chairman of the board of Black Rifle, which is a $1.5 billion company, will tell you I am the only person whose telephone call he answers every time. He said, because I'll say, "Hey, I got 2 questions or 3 questions," and I'll call him. And he says, Baker asks his questions, gets his answers, ends the conversation. So I value other, I guess I put a premium on other people's time. I'm very considerate when it comes to that. And I don't text these people memes and stupid shit. I don't do that. I don't waste, like, there's a lot of people, man, that like get on these, somehow meet these people and they start blowing them up with memes. "Oh man, did you see this? Can you believe this?" Or text them dumb stuff and just waste their time. I don't do that. I'm hyper selective in how I communicate with these people. And that's how, and as a Southerner, I learned a long time ago that like when you get invited somewhere, that my goal has always been to get invited back. So first trip, I don't care if I shoot, if it's a hunting trip or whatever. Like if I'll pass up on everything just because I want to be like, yeah, I like Baker. He's a nice guy. He's funny. He's entertaining. He's polite. He's respectful. He doesn't ask anything. Let's invite him back. So that's my goal, is always to get invited back. So when I get in the room with these people, I always want to leave having made a very, very positive impression on these people. Versus some people that just get starstruck. I don't give a shit. Like Jay Cutler or John, I don't talk to them about football. They don't. That's all they've ever done is talk about football. They're professional athletes for a decade, their whole lives, and all anybody wants to do is blow them up about football. I don't do that. Plenty of elected officials, congressmen and senators, same thing. Like I don't blow them up about, "Oh man, can you believe what the Dems are doing?" Or the assassination attempt, or Kamala Harris, and all that stuff. Like I try to provide value. So like I'll reach out to them and I'll try to get them on podcasts and things like that. I don't ask anything for it. So as long as you're providing value, there's a need for you. And that's my goal, is to constantly provide value.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was telling Canyon, you reached out to see if we would want to have you on the podcast, and I was just immediately fascinated with your profile and who you are, and I knew of you and some of your history, but hadn't met you in person. And I find that fascinating because, again, you probably get invited on a lot of podcasts, and you've probably been on some pretty high profile ones. You obviously have been in the room with a lot of great people. So what compelled you to reach out?
That's another. So here's the deal. One is greater than zero because you don't ever know who that one person listening is going to be. With Vote for America, the single best thing that happened to us was a result of me going on the smallest podcast I've ever been on in my life. Gabriella Hoffman has DC Conservative Podcast. She does about 300 listens per episode. And she's a friend. And I went on her podcast, and a writer for the New York Post listened to it, reached out and did an interview that got 1 million views on it. So, there's no podcast too big or too small. I mean, and another thing, like, I will introduce you guys to a ton of people to have on your show that are in my ecosystem. You guys had me on your show, gave me a platform to run my mouth. So the least I could do is make introductions for you guys.
And we appreciate that. And that's another thing I told Canyon. Again, we're about the same age, and been on a different journey, of course, but I think we probably arrived at similar places in life where you recognize, you mentioned being about 40, and that probably similar timeline with me, and now 10 years into that, you've only, all you've got to give and share is your time. And so, you get to a point where you're like, I don't have time to do things that I don't want to do, or do things that I'm not interested in. And I definitely don't want people telling me what to do or what to not do, in my day-to-day life. I want to do things that fill my cup and that provide value to others, because that's how I get feedback and feel like I'm adding value.
It's interesting you mentioned time. So Carl Icahn, who's a very famous financier. Carl Icahn's worth about $30 billion. I'm sorry, $20 billion. And Carl Icahn, at his 86th birthday a year ago, said he would give $19 billion to be 30 years younger.
Wow.
So, it's interesting how valuable time is. And you never realize how valuable time is until you're in your 40s. No one realizes that until you're after 45, honestly. And, like when I was 20, in my 20s, I just wanted to be, like a millionaire. That was my goal. Oh, I want to be rich. And then you get to a point where that's a reality. And now you're like, God, man, what I wouldn't give to being broken in my 20s again, That's the one thing that we have. That's all we have is time on this earth. And every single day is one less day. Like I'm 49. I've probably got 30 summers. I've got 20 summers that I'll get to enjoy. That's it. 20 more, And when you start looking at things like that, man, it gets kind of scary. Another thing that happened to me when I turned 40 was I realized I was immortal and I wasn't going to live forever. So I realized my mortality at age 40, which was that was a shocking, kind of smack in the face, So I'm not one of those guys that tries to maximize every second of every day. Like yesterday, I was a complete useless piece of crap. I did nothing. And some days I just like not doing anything. But yeah, man, it's great. Like we went across the state. We went scalloping Friday morning. Then we drove up to the farm in Georgia and looked for arrowheads and found a bunch of really good arrowheads on a new farm we got. And that's honestly, man, that's my favorite thing in the world to do. I don't listen. I would rather surface hunt for arrowheads than go elk hunting. Wow. Yeah, that's true. I would much if there's a bunch of points. If it's like an area that's has a bunch of points, I would rather do that than go elk hunting.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you what do you like to do in your spare time? So you mentioned a few things that the arrowhead surprises me. I didn't know about that, but that's cool.
That's one of the things. Like the people that really know me, I'm a super high energy, aggressive. I'm aggressive. I get after it. I'm blunt. I'm in your face. I don't let off the gas. But to watch me walk around a field slowly with a stick, staring at the ground and not talking and just walking around in the Georgia heat, and it's 100 degrees, and middle of the day is the best time to find them based on the sun angle, And people are just like, dude, there's just no way that you like that. I was like, I'd do it. I'll do that over anything. Like I absolutely. Let me grab a couple of the ones I found this week. Found this. This one was found where hogs had been rooting. So that was kind of funny. This one was in one of the ag fields. And then we found this in a new, that's obviously a broken point, but, and then this one's my favorite find of the weekend. So in Georgia, so Georgia's not like out west. Like you guys have like the pointy, stabby, killy ones. Georgia's an agrarian society. Like these are all tools and spear points. Like that's a tool. Like that's a super, super old piece. So I do that. I love
do you
doing
date
that.
those? Like, do you have someone that tells you when they were used, or
no? I should, but like I'm trying to hold off from going down that rabbit hole because once I do
Game
that,
over.
it's over.
A different
like
kind of it spoils the fun. Because then you're trying to how do I find an older one?
There's places
instead of enjoying the next one.
Yeah, like I like the old rudimentary stuff, like the really, really old, like clunky, thick, kind of like junky ones. Like those are the ones that like I really like. Like I've done it in Texas, and I've got some like super. Let me grab two of my Texas. This is super gnarly.
It's big.
Yeah,
that was in Texas.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, dude, it was sticking out of the ground. It was like this.
Shiv somebody.
And I just kept pulling. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, ah. And then this is another one that like I love this one. Like I found this at our farm in Georgia. See, it's got that vein to it. So like this type of stuff, like the super thick, like clunky tooly stuff is cooler to me than like this knife, like, and then I messed up the display and Melissa's going to have to redo it. So I have a ton. Like we've been doing this for couple years now, 3 years, 4 years, and that's my favorite thing to do.
What makes like a good arrowhead?
For me, I don't care. I don't care if it's broken. Like this is just as cool as this. Like this is perfect, and this is a broke.
Yep. Do you have like a display for all of them? Or?
Like this. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's right over there on the table. Like I got jars of these things. I love them. Like I'd rather look for arrowheads than.
Yeah, we took a family trip to Savannah, went out to Hilton Head. Rode the bikes around the beach, and what a cool area. I mean, we did some history tours, and at night we did the ghost tours, and just walking around Savannah was really, really fascinating to me. So I can imagine the history that has gone on there.
Yeah, well, and the thing with like the arrowheads, it's like you pick it up and it's just like, when is the last time another human being touched this? Thousands of years ago. It's stone, like thousands and thousands of years ago. But yeah, growing up in Savannah is a great place to grow up, great place to be a kid. The beach, Tybee Island, and just it was awesome. It was wonderful. I truly, truly loved it. It was a wonderful childhood, excellent childhood. And then, but one thing I would like to chat about is Smokeless Vets. It's a project I'm working on. We care about the health and well-being of estimated 1 million veterans who smoke cigarettes. SmokelessVets.org is a community of veterans, active duty members, their families, and other Americans. Our mission is to provide veterans and their families with the tools and information they need to quit smoking traditional cigarettes through education and advocacy. So the problem is that veterans who wish to quit smoking traditional cigarettes are being failed by the VA administration and the Biden administration because they refuse to embrace innovative non-cigarette nicotine products, and then they misinform veterans about methods used by other countries to help their citizens stop smoking traditional cigarettes. So the problem is, hold on 1 second. So like there've been some studies in like Sweden and England that like nicotine gum and nicotine patches and whatnot just simply don't work. They don't help you quit smoking. So transitioning onto other forms of like smokeless nicotine, that's the ideal way to quit smoking. Like the VA, for example, like they have these posters in VA clinics that are like, if you text the word stress to a certain phone number, it'll help you quit smoking. And they have these posters, and they spent tens of millions of dollars on these silly posters. And it's like, that's what you guys came up with. So that's one project I'm working on, Smokeless Vets. And then we have Vote4America.org, which is getting how important it is for people to go out and vote. So if you look at what happened in Venezuela yesterday, um, they don't have free and fair elections. So, and those people were like traveling on boats and rafts from Colombia to go home to Venezuela so they could vote. Like it's, and like here we have all of these people that won't even get off their couch and go vote. So, you know, the thing we started on with Vote4America.org was the hunting community, hunting in 2A. So, like the number of hunters and gun owners that don't vote is staggering. So, I'm going to give you. Where do you guys like to hunt? Where's your favorite state to hunt?
Well, yeah, Utah, of course, but you know, if you're hunting bears, Canada, I mean, but of course, you know, around the Western U.S., you know, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado,
Okay.
Montana.
So, in Utah, where you gentlemen live, in the last election, there was 121,000 firearms owners, licensed gun owners, and licensed hunters above the age of 18 that did not vote in the last election. State of Pennsylvania, 515,000. Swing state. Ohio, 620,000. Swing state. Michigan is 370,000. Also swing state. Minnesota, swing state, 261,000. Wisconsin, 338,000. Those numbers are staggering. Georgia, 350,000.
Millions of people not voting.
It's completely insane. Apathy, they don't think that their vote counts. They think the elections are rigged. They think the elections are stolen. But you don't hear the left ever saying, I'm not going to vote. They don't have the same level of apathy that the right does. So, you know, if 3% of the hunters, licensed hunters and gun owners that didn't vote in the last election would participate in this election, it'd be a game over. It would be so big that the western states would turn into swing states. So our focus is getting people. We're focusing on apolitical influencers and getting them to push the message, which is how important it is to vote. And so by doing that, you take someone like Brooke Entz, who lives in Utah, former CrossFit Games athlete. Brooke doesn't really chop it up and talk about politics, but now that she's making these videos and posting about it, it's telling her followers that it's okay for them to go out and talk about it. So that's what Vote4America.org is. We're vote the number 4America.org, and it's just we're pushing hard to get people off the couch, register to vote. And it's not just enough to register to vote. You need to take one person with you that's never voted before. So if you look at every single person listening to this has interacted with someone today that didn't vote in the last election. Family member, coworker, member from the gym, member from your church. Like, it's super important that we get out and we vote because our country, the future of our country, depends on it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of really nasty stuff going on out there, man.
There is. Yeah, and it's like my generation, I'm 26, and it's pretty interesting to see how much it's shifted as, like you're saying, you know, influencers are getting involved and I feel like on social media, it's becoming more okay. It's not a topic that's super taboo anymore. So I think it's super important that, you know, we need to develop our own opinions, right? And actually do the research because I mean, like me, up until a couple of years ago, like I didn't ever look into who was running or I did vote, but like I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't understand the policies. And now it's it's interesting to see there's a lot more voices with bigger platforms talking about, their thoughts. And I think it's unique that we can, take all the information from what we're watching or listening to and develop our own opinion. So that's awesome. I think you're doing that.
Yeah. So as a Southerner, like you never talk about
Hmm.
politics, religion, money, or how many acres you own, your family owns. Like you just don't talk about those things. And now it's like, you need to talk about those things. You need to talk about the things that are important to you. And being self-censoring is absurd. It's like disarming. It's like we have the First Amendment and protected by the Second, and it's important that you exercise those rights because in the history of society, there's no documented cases where people have protested and demanded that their rights be taken away. Like you have these people like marching about like demanding censorship and disarming. It's like what are you guys doing? Like when no one's ever been like, no, we have too many rights. We want you to, and like, tell me one person in the U.S. government that you want involved in your life. Like, I just want to be left alone, And like, it's like with the Smokeless Vets thing, like the, the, the VA and the Biden administration, like if you feel an urge to smoke, see this poster on the wall, text the word stress to this number and it'll help you quit. They spent tens of millions of dollars on that study. And like, those are the types of people that you don't want having any say so in your life or your kids' lives. There's nothing but trouble there. Because government officials and elected officials and bureaucrats, those people are idiots.
Yeah, they're a profit drain.
I mean, look at them.
They
Look
take
how they
other
behave.
people's profit and they blow it on things that are not an investment, and so it never comes back.
Yeah, so they all feel that they're more qualified to run your life than you are. That's the crazy thing. It's like they either want money or they want power. There's no
They're banking on us being naive and that we need and should be told what to do because we don't view the world the same way that they do, and they feel like they're going to lose their power and control if we get out of line and start having too many of our own ideas.
For sure. We were in London the first week of June, and like London, England doesn't have a middle class. They have a working class and they have wealthy. There's no middle class. And I ultimately believe the powers that be want to eradicate the middle class in America because the middle class is what keeps this country great, Yeah, and yeah, we're the problem. And like their goal is to get rid of the middle class. They listen, if you held a gun to their heads and said, I'm going to ask you a question, you're going to answer it honestly. Would you like to see the middle class go away in this country and it be lower class and working class and wealthy? They would say absolutely, because we can control the poor. Because the poor rely on the government. The working class relies on the government. And the government can give in, can take away. And that's the issue at hand. And like you see all this other stuff and it's just a distraction, like men and women's sports. Like that was a distraction from the border being open. Like I don't know anyone that supports men and women's sports. Like that's crazy. But they made such a big deal about it that no one paid attention to the border. And then you've got like the trans stuff and like the minor, the kids and genital mutilation, and it's like what is going on? Like they're not old enough to vote, they're not old enough to own a firearm, but you're saying that they're in tune with themselves enough to like start taking hormone and puberty blockers? Like, huh? That's all a distraction, man. That is like you see this going on. What you don't see is what's happening down here. It's this. You're looking at this, but you don't see what's happening.
The more that term,
it's sick.
Toxic masculinity. It's like there's no such thing. It's just masculinity, and that's a threat because if we're too masculine and ready to defend and fight for our rights and our freedom and our family, and we're going to put our foot down, then that is in the way of their agenda, and they don't want to have that.
Absolutely. An armed society is a polite society. But you're seeing a lot of stuff now, like they're flip-flopping on all their policies. Like the border's secure and like they're just flip-flopping because it's, we're right there at the end, close to the end of the election cycle, and there's an election in a few months, 100 days. and that's they're flip flopping on all this crazy stuff that they've been allowing for the past 4 years. Now they're not. It's all bad. Like Gavin Newsom getting rid of all the homeless encampments in California. It's like, dude, where you been? Like, wait a minute, what? And the thing that's alarming, man, is there are people that are dumb enough to be like, oh yeah, he's making positive change. It's
Short-term memory.
He destroys your.
Yeah, stranger than fiction. You would, 10 years ago, you would never have believed what's happening right now. And yeah, it's a shame, and it's time to stand up.
Yeah, in the Paris Olympics, the opening ceremony for the Paris Olympics, it's like, like let's mock Christianity with transvestites.
Yeah, in front of children.
Why would you? Why would you do that? Like, I don't understand. Like, why? What's the purpose of that? 72% of the U.S. population identifies as Christian, and even Iran was like, what talking garbage about it. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, this is unacceptable. Like, why would you mock millions of people? Like, Iran. I'm agreeing with Iran. Yeah. Like, what? What's happening?
Well, it's softening. They're trying to soften the edges and the boundaries and erase those things so that they can move the line. You keep moving the goalposts long enough, pretty soon you're outside of the stadium, and now you're playing soccer instead of football.
Yeah, like look at state of Washington outlawing mountain lion hunting with dogs, outlawing bear hunting. They start focusing on the outside of the circle, erasing those lines, and eventually they get into the center and they get rid of everything that you hold.
Yeah, the anti-hunting is just anti-gun, and it's just a different. It's the back door in their mind to try and eradicate hunting.
Well, the anti-hunting, the animal rights people are lunatics. Like, I've been the victim of an anti-hunting campaign online, and like those people, they want you dead. They want to ruin your life. They want you dead. And the majority of them are from the UK. They're cat women, childless cat women. I know that's kind of a talking point, but I've been saying that since 2016. They're childless cat women, and the men that do it interact with porn stars online a lot. Like, I've spent hours tracking these people now, and like they're sick. They're sick in the head. It's like, last summer we were in Scotland, and they have a place called Isle of Skye, which is just this massive. It's probably like the size of the state of Utah, I would guess. And we drove around Isle of Skye for a couple days, and we saw 2 red deer. That's all we saw. And it is literally like the countryside of Utah. All right, it's all outdoors. And no development, like virtually zero. And like if you did that drive around Utah, you would see hundreds and thousands of ungulates, deer, elk, moose, all kinds of antelope, all kinds of stuff. But there's 2 things this country does better than anybody else in the world. One is finance, and number 2 is the North American model for wildlife conservation. There is no country on this planet that can hold a candle to us in that. And I don't want to hear anyone else's opinion from outside the U.S. on how we manage our wildlife. I don't care. There's no country that they don't have, that no one has what we have. No one has what we have. So, greatest country on earth, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah, and it's because at the root, it was managed by the hunting community. It was managed by people that have passion and love for the wildlife. I went recently with my brother and the local Utah Division of Wildlife Resource. We went to find little deer fawns that had dropped. They put a tag in these impregnated doe deer in the fall. And when they drop, they've got a little chip that comes out with the babies. And then they go and take blood samples, give them vitamins, check their vitality, do studies and statistics that the mom's collared so they can see where they have traveled throughout the year, where they end up bringing their fawns back to birth. And just a fascinating thing. And we had 2 Brigham Young University biologist students that were there working on their master's degrees, and then someone from the division, and my brother and I that went to help. And just fascinating work that people are doing. And I'm sitting there thinking, And I hear all these, keyboard warriors online complaining and griping about everything and the tags and the deer population. And, I hunt with this versus that and just bickering about everything that doesn't matter. And here's these guys, boots on the ground, hiking 7-8 miles in to just get this little bit of data so that they can make better decisions on maintaining the population of deer. And I just think if 95% of the people knew what was actually going on out there, they would get behind it, they would support it, they would appreciate it, they would actually grow to love it like I do. But they don't take any time to dig in. They just browse past the headlines and jump on the bandwagon of the latest thing. And all of a sudden we're influencing people to make what I call ballot box biology decisions, where we have people that have nothing to do with the actual resource voting for its ultimate demise if it goes the wrong way.
They have, and they also, the thing that's fascinating is they don't understand how it's funded. Like, we pay for everything with the Pittman Robertson Act, I believe is what it is. Yeah, like 10% of all sales go to fund conservation. So we're self-supporting, you know. And yeah, I agree with you. I just wish those people could see the things that go into what, because like there's no person that loves animals more than a hunter. Like no one loves lions more than lion hunters, and no one loves sheep more than sheep hunters. And they will do everything in their power to ensure that there's a huntable population. So I remember when I lived in New York City, my roommate she was like, well, she's like, I'm a vegetarian. And I went, oh crap, here we go. Why? And she said, I just love animals. And I went, okay, I can't argue with that. I don't have a problem with that. I was expecting like some asinine, defense of argument towards why being a vegan is superior to being a meat eater. But she just said, no, I love animals. And I went, okay, I can't argue with you on that one. That's okay.
All right, Baker, it was a pleasure coming on today, and we appreciate your words of wisdom and some of the insight, and we'll make sure to have Vote for America and Smokeless Vets in our bio, and we appreciate, taking time out of your busy day to chat with us.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.